To the average person, debt is a financial trap, something to be feared, avoided, and repaid as quickly as possible. Yet, in the upper echelons of society, the world's billionaires view debt not as a liability, but as their greatest asset. Billionaires buy homes with loans. They fund their lifestyles with loans. Some even spend their entire lives living on borrowed money. And somehow, they end up richer because of it. So what do they know that everyone else doesn't? Today, we're breaking down one of the most misunderstood wealth strategies in the world and revealing how the rich use debt as a tool while it becomes a burden for everyone else. Let's take a closer look. For most people, debt feels like a necessary evil. A mortgage to buy a home, a car loan to get to work, a credit card used to cover unexpected expenses. The process usually follows the same pattern. You borrow money today and promise to pay it back tomorrow, plus interest. At first, it seems manageable, but over time, the payments begin to pile up. Every month, a portion of your paycheck disappears before you ever get a chance to enjoy it. And that's where the problem begins. The average individual services their debt using earned income, meaning they trade hours for a paycheck, surrender a significant portion to taxes, and use the remnants to pay the bank. It's an exhausting cycle of being taxed first and living second. The bank gets paid, the government gets paid, and the borrower carries the burden. This is why debt feels so heavy for the average person, because their entire financial life depends on a paycheck. Lose the paycheck and the entire system starts to fall apart. Miss enough payments and the bank takes back the asset. The house, the car, whatever was used as collateral. From the outside, it looks like debt itself is the problem. But that's not entirely true. The real issue is what the debt is attached to. Think about it. A person takes out a loan for a new car. The moment they drive it off the lot, it begins losing value. Year after year, the asset becomes worth less. Yet, the debt remains. The borrower is paying interest on something that's shrinking. It's a losing equation from the very beginning. Now compare that to how wealthy people borrow. The difference isn't that they avoid debt. The difference is that they borrow against things that grow. This is where the story completely changes. Imagine two people walking into a bank. The first person says, "I need money because I want to buy something." The second person says, "I already own something valuable. I simply want access to cash." To a bank, these are two completely different conversations. The first borrower represents risk. The second borrower represents opportunity. Because banks don't really care about how rich you are. They care about one thing: how likely they are to get their money back. That's it. If someone owns a portfolio worth $20 million and wants to borrow $2 million, the bank isn't particularly worried. Even if something goes wrong, there's plenty of collateral protecting the loan. The borrower could sell assets. The bank could recover its money. The risk is low. And when risk is low, everything changes. Interest rates fall, terms become flexible, approvals happen faster. The borrower gains leverage. This is the first major secret behind how the rich use debt. They don't borrow because they have nothing. They borrow because they already have something valuable. The loan is backed by assets rather than income, and that distinction changes everything. But here's where things become truly fascinating. The wealthy don't borrow because they can't afford to spend their own money. They borrow because selling is often the more expensive option. Imagine you own $50 million worth of stock. You need $5 million to fund a new home, travel, investments, and everyday expenses. Most people assume you would simply sell $5 million worth of shares. But doing that creates a problem: taxes. The moment you sell, part of those gains belong to the government. Depending on where you live, that tax bill could reach millions. So, instead, many wealthy investors choose another route. They borrow against the stock. The shares remain untouched. They continue growing. They continue generating wealth. And the investor receives cash without triggering a taxable sale. Suddenly, debt becomes a financial tool rather than a financial burden. And this is where many people first begin to understand why the rich view loans so differently. If you want to pull back the curtain on how elite wealth is truly managed, consider subscribing to The Wealth Estate. Here, we decode the quiet strategies and financial systems of the world's top 1%. Now, let's look at the unconventional ways these loans are actually structured. The next secret is something most people never hear about. The wealthy often structure loans differently than everyone else. Most borrowers receive traditional loans. Every month, they pay interest and principal. Little by little, the debt gets reduced until it eventually disappears. But many wealthy borrowers use interest-only loans. That means they aren't required to aggressively pay down the original balance. Instead, they simply cover the interest. Let's use an example. Consider an investor borrowing $10 million at a 3% interest rate. The annual interest payment amounts to $300,000. While that may seem substantial, it's nominal when positioned against a $50 million portfolio growing at 8% a year, especially if those assets are growing faster than 3% annually. If the portfolio grows by 8% per year, that's $4 million in growth. Meanwhile, the interest costs only $300,000. The math starts working in their favor. Their assets are growing faster than their debt costs. And that's the game. Not eliminating debt, managing it, because the goal isn't necessarily to pay off the loan. The goal is to keep the assets working. Then comes another powerful strategy: refinancing. Most people think a loan eventually reaches an end date where it must be paid back. And technically that's true. But wealthy borrowers often don't pay the loan off in the traditional sense. They refinance it. Imagine that same $50 million portfolio. 10 years later, perhaps it's worth $100 million. The investor still has a loan, but now their assets have doubled. The bank looks at the situation and sees even less risk than before. So the investor takes out a new loan. The original loan gets paid off. Additional cash becomes available, and the cycle begins again. The assets remain untouched, the investor avoids selling, the tax bill remains delayed, and the wealth continues compounding. This is one reason many billionaires appear to have surprisingly low salaries. Their lifestyle isn't funded through income, it's funded through liquidity. There's a big difference. Income is taxable, loans generally are not, and that's one of the biggest advantages of asset-backed borrowing. Now, some people hear this strategy and think it sounds incredibly dangerous, and it can be. But wealthy individuals aren't borrowing against random collectibles, speculative investments, or risky trends. They're usually borrowing against productive assets, businesses, prime real estate, diversified stock portfolios, assets with long histories of creating wealth. More importantly, they're borrowing conservatively. A billionaire with $100 million in assets might only borrow $10 million or $20 million. The bank still has a massive safety cushion, and that's why these arrangements are often considered low risk. The borrower isn't gambling, they're leveraging. There's a difference. But perhaps the most controversial part of this entire strategy comes at the very end. Within the most exclusive wealth circles, this lifelong play is known by a precise, almost clinical phrase: buy, borrow, die. It sounds provocative, but the mechanics are flawless. You acquire appreciating assets, you borrow against them to fund an elite lifestyle, and eventually you pass those untouched assets to your heirs. Why does that matter? Because in many tax systems, inherited assets receive special treatment. The value of those assets is often adjusted to current market value when passed to heirs. This can dramatically reduce the taxes owed on decades of appreciation. In simple terms, assets that may have grown enormously during someone's lifetime can transfer to their family with significant tax advantages. The loan gets settled, the remaining assets stay in the family, and the cycle can continue for another generation. This is one reason some fortunes survive for decades or even centuries. They're not constantly being sold off, they're being preserved. Now, before anyone rushes to copy this strategy, there's an important reality check. Most people cannot use debt the way the rich do, at least not immediately, because the strategy only works when the assets come first. The wealthy aren't borrowing because they need money. They're borrowing because they already own valuable things. That's the difference that changes everything. Without appreciating assets, debt becomes a burden. With appreciating assets, debt can become leverage. And leverage, when used responsibly, can accelerate wealth creation. The lesson isn't that everyone should start taking out loans. The lesson is understanding why the rich view debt differently. They don't see debt as something that makes them poorer. They see it as a tool that allows them to keep their assets working. And that single mindset shift explains why two people can use the exact same financial product and end up with completely different outcomes. The biggest difference between the rich and everyone else isn't how much they earn. It's how they use the assets they already own. While most people work for money, the wealthy often make their money work for them. And sometimes they even make borrowed money work for them too. If you're ready to explore how the ultra-rich legally shield their fortunes from the modern financial system, select the video appearing on your screen right now. Welcome to the Wealth Estate, and we will see you in the next breakdown.